Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Jade Denson, and I am the Director of Community Engagement for the Minnesota Technology Association. I'm joined by Nidhi Sen, Senior Engineering Manager at Target, and I'm so grateful to have secured Nidhi for this fireside chat where she's going to talk more about how Target has approached hiring from an untapped tech talent pool to offset the huge gaps Minnesota companies experience when it comes to sourcing tech talent. For the first 20 minutes of this conversation, Nidhi will talk through Target's cohort model for sourcing untapped talent and how it's been such a huge win for her and the team. Target's innovative approach is also such an important part of their mission to build more diverse engineering teams. After the presentation portion, Nidhi and I will cozy up to the fire and sit by the virtual fire, and I'll ask her some questions about this innovative model and what's to come now that workplace cultures and practices are rapidly changing. So now I'm going to get out of the way and stop talking a little bit and let Nidhi dive into some content. Let's go sit by that virtual fire. Nidhi, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Jade. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Hey, everybody. As Jade said, I am a senior engineering manager at Target. I work in the mobile app space now. And before that, I was engineering manager in the supply chain area. So regarding the tech recruiting challenges, some of the challenges that my peers and I had been facing were the same challenges being faced by engineering leaders across Minnesota, really across US. First and foremost, the number of available qualified candidates is really less than the number of openings, even today in this environment. So we really have a scenario in our industry of negative unemployment. Secondly, we want our team members to look like our customers. So we really want a diversity and richness in the background, whether it's educational experiences or work and life experiences. And lastly, when we have hired these awesome diverse candidates, we want to increase the stickiness and retention in our company. So we were looking to do something that would be a joint investment by the employees and Target together. So as we started looking at these, one possible solution we looked at was for our new hires, instead of going to the traditional route of a 4-year college degree, someone from MIS or computer science, in addition to that, also start looking at some non-traditional sources. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the coding bootcamp, these are intense full day plus programs of 3 to 6 months. And they are meant for experienced professionals who may have experiences in different walks of life and who are highly motivated and are looking to make a career change into information technology. So as we started this, the hiring process that we followed was the same we would follow for any engineer, which is we did some screening, HR screening, tech screening, a case study, and then a series of on-site interviews and conversations. So here are some of the area bootcamps we were looking at: Software Guild, Prime Digital Academy, U of M Bootcamp, as well as Hackbright Academy. We started this experiment about 4 years ago, and we started small. So we hired 2 folks from bootcamps, and that went well. So we doubled it to the next year. And then last couple of years, we really ramped up. We had been looking for some diverse educational and work experience, and boy, we got it. These are actually just some of the experiences and backgrounds that our bootcamp hires brought with them into our organization. So as we went through this, there were learnings that we had, and I'd like to share them with you. Hopefully they'll be helpful. First and foremost, my peers and I had been doing tech talent assessment for years, and the first one really threw us off. Our tried and tested playbook did not work anymore. And here's the reason why. If you think about it, somebody who's coming from 4-year degree probably took a couple of coding classes in high school. They learned the basics of modern day software engineering, whether it's object-oriented programming, data structures, algorithms, and then kept building on it for 4 years. They probably did a couple of internships. which means that they have seen software development in an enterprise context, whether it's different software development lifecycle processes like Agile, whether it's things like CI/CD, and things like that. For somebody coming from a boot camp, we had to understand that they would naturally have significantly less technology exposure. Hence, we had to change our assessment to start assessing more on potential on what they could do rather than experience on what they had already done. The second thing was, in hindsight, it seems obvious. It's really important as we bring in the bootcamp hires for their first project, at least, they are placed in the right nurturing environment and project, which is not very high stress and very high paced, fast paced, so that they have time and space to keep building on what they had already started learning. And then finally, it was really important that they have appropriate mentoring. If they did not have any extended support and they are just thrown into these projects, that would be a pitfall. So as these were some of the pitfalls we learned, what did success look like? And fortunately, we had a lot of that. So a couple of significant highlights I'd like to share. First and foremost, as we are hiring the right talent. So drive and self-motivation to learn a little bit above and beyond what is being taught in the class was a crucial differentiator. And the reason is, as they join and they start working on projects, they would really need that drive to continue self-learning. And some of our bootcamp hires had that, and they brought that, and they were incredibly successful. Also, if they had worked in some kind of team environment, in whatever field, that was really important, because so much of the work that we do in information technology is just team-based. And as we have hired the right person, how we onboard them is also really important. So for our fresh college graduates, through a program called TLP, or Target Leadership Program, we have a formal onboarding of 3 weeks, primarily to introduce them into tools and frameworks and so on being used by our organization. So we plugged in a few of the bootcamp hires into that existing program, and that was very helpful. I also already touched on choosing the right project. And then another pivotal factor for setting up people for success was the continued mentorship by the engineering manager, by the lead and senior engineers in the team, so that they continue to have that mentorship and enroll support. So these were some of the things we saw sets up folks for success. In addition to that, we also went back and asked them. We got the feedback on what is it that is making you successful? What is it that we are doing right? And what is it that we should be doing more of to help you be successful in this role? And as we asked that question, certain themes began to emerge. And a lot of them were around focused time and support, availability of educational tools, as well as mentorship, because people were driven to succeed. They just needed the right support for it. So we took all the learnings from the last 4 years and the best of what we had offered and we had learned to offer, and we brought it all together, and we decided to kick off a more formalized program around that called the Target Emerging Engineer Program. And some of the significant parts of this program were going to be, firstly, we have had a lot of success in the cohort model, where instead of bringing in engineers or interns or fresh college graduates and just having them in the team, we actually bring them as a cohort, and they learn from each other. Also having the manager as well as an assigned tech mentor, having 3 weeks of onboarding, and finally, during the program duration, which is a total of 12 months, we would again be bringing them together for additional learning offerings. And these were going to be some significant highlights of this program. And it was going to be launched in April of 2020. And we thought we had the path forward and everything was all set. And of course, COVID hit right at the same time. And the whole company went all remote. And as we know, in any path, there are twists and turns. So we had to quickly be agile on our feet and redefine our path forward. we still wanted to go ahead, and we did. We brought in our first cohort in April, in the end of April, April 27th, and we kicked off the cohort, and it was remote. And there were some things that we had to adapt. So the first part of this program, of course, is the virtual onboarding of 3 weeks and training. So we had to adapt our training. We had never really had to do workshop with our presenters. They had been doing these for years. So we had to upskill our presenters with dedicated workshops on how to adapt the training to the virtual era. Also, the content, we converted it to be much more visually appealing to keep people engaged. And then the most important part, and you must have seen a theme in this whole presentation, we keep getting feedback. And as we keep getting feedback on what's working, what's not working, we have been iterating on the content as well. So in addition to adapting the training, we also prepared our bootcamp engineers. We had dedicated sessions where we walked them through step by step on how to use Zoom and other tools. We established norms on things that would come very naturally when you are all in a room, how to do it when we are all virtual, how to ask questions, how to indicate that they have stepped away for a break, and things like that. So this is going well. And as this is going, again, we are taking feedback, we are iterating on it. And once this is over, we will be bringing people together for additional learnings as they start being a part of their team and contributing. So a lot of learning going on, and we are super excited about this program. And I'm hoping that these kind of programs start getting adopted industry-wide, and we continue to grow our pool and start tapping into some of those untapped potential areas. So that's all I had. Thanks everyone for listening. Jade, on to you. I think
I had to mute myself. Good old virtual.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you sharing those insights. And now I'm just excited to dive into some questions. So I think one of the things that comes to mind for me as you talk through this, and I'm lucky enough to have heard this twice because I saw you do it at the Tech Talent Conference in February, and it was just so insightful for me. So I'm just excited to kind of get you in the chair to talk a little bit more about some things without such a hard timeline. But part of what comes to mind for me is, from the outside looking in, one could argue that this model is more work. Like, you are intentionally thinking about what are the right additional resources you need. You're intentionally thinking about ways to offset like mentoring and all these things that don't go into just kind of the standard hiring process. So can you talk through the cost benefit analysis of this more intentional and more work approach for like what you're getting when thinking about these untapped talent pools?
Yeah, absolutely. So you are right. Bringing people in a cohort, coordinating it, and so on is extra effort. And we have been doing it not just for our bootcamp hires. We have been following a similar model with our interns, with our engineers from fresh college graduates, as I mentioned. But not just that, but even where we have some other programs which are for experienced technologists who are looking to move into management or into product ownership and things like that. While it is that extra investment, we've also found it to be incredibly helpful. Firstly, as people start these journeys together and go through some of the challenges, so much of learning really happens from each other. I was a part of one of those programs called EMIP, Engineering Management Immersion Program, where I moved from being a full-time technologist into management. And so much of the learning just happens from each other. And another huge advantage is once you have completed the program and you move into your role, you continue those connections. So you have this incredible network across the company, and that's so helpful in day-to-day work. So we have found that investment to be definitely worth it.
Awesome. I'm also curious, something that comes to mind for me is it feels like this model is a mix of the talent organization and a mix of like HR and talent acquisition. So it's like technology teams and other worlds. So I'm curious, how did technology and talent acquisition and potentially HR partner to make this experiment come to life and work, and kind of talk through who owns what? Like, where does your engineering team or the technology organization drive things? Where does talent acquisition or HR step in? And how does that synergy come together to make this work?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a complete partnership between technology organization where I come from, as well as our HR and talent acquisition partners. Especially because we were trying something new, we had lots of conversations. We had lots of kind of retrospective on what is working, how do we adjust our assessment, and so on. So just to answer your question on who kind of owns what, the technology works with talent assessment to define the job requisition in terms of expected backgrounds and things like that. So our incredibly talented TA folks network and they reach out. They have conversations going on with the area bootcamp and they help build a great pipeline. They also conduct the initial screenings just to get a sense of how motivated are people, what are their areas of interest within technologies, is it more of user experience and UI side, is it more backend and things like that. And after that initial screening, we have a conversation about the potential candidates, and then technology steps in and we do the tech screening, we do the tech assessments and give our recommendations, and then we work all along, we work together to answer questions and so on, and hopefully then bring in folks.
Awesome. So it sounds like the partnership with Bootcamps sits primarily with the talent acquisition folks.
Yes, that's
okay,
correct.
awesome. So something that comes to mind for me is you talked about the challenges that non-traditional talent pools experience in terms of they have less exposure to technology culture and they don't have as much of an extended support network. So when I think about those two things, I imagine that's even harder now that we're all virtual, because once they join Target in this cohort model, they don't have that readily available 24/7 around them. So I'm just curious, what are ways to counteract that, especially in light of us being remote? Like, what are things that you all are thinking through to think about that support piece and that exposure piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going all remote definitely has had an impact on all of us, but especially in terms of support for the newer members of the team. Because really so much of the learning happens in casual conversations within a pod or a quick hallway question to a more senior member of the team, which is not going to happen now. So I think the most important thing is for the leaders and senior members of the team to be mindful of that gap. It's easy to forget about how it felt like when you had joined the team really new. And to be more proactive with connecting with the new members to see if there are any questions or blockers in their way. And just for them to know that it is perfectly fine to reach out and ask questions, even if you don't have the person sitting right next to you and you can tap them on the shoulder. So different teams do it differently. We have regular video syncs and huddles. We have one-on-one conversations for a pulse check and other ways of bringing the teams together, as well as tech mentor and the manager. They are the ones who really own that relationship and making sure that there is just space to keep asking questions.
Right. Awesome. So something you mentioned stood out to me, emphasis on the right project for the right person and how that's like such a key part. And I'm just curious, and talk through as much as you can. Obviously, this probably looks different depending on the person, all those things. What's y'all's process for thinking about the right project for that first project?
Yeah, so the teams who are interested in bringing on an emerging engineer do have to apply for it. And as they
Oh,
apply
okay.
it, they don't just talk about the tech stack and what they do and so on, but they also talk about how they are going to set up people for success, how they are
Okay.
going to create that warm and nurturing environment. And this really forces the leaders to think through some of this. And what is the plan that they will have for making sure that the new engineers are getting the support? And they also make sure that both the mentor as well as the manager are aligned, and this plan has been shared out with the team before the new member joins.
Got
So
it.
some of that thinking through beforehand helps in making sure that it's the right project.
Awesome. So when thinking about sort of the technical side and want to go pure off like that piece,
Mhm.
how have you seen from like a pure technical talent standpoint, how have you seen boot campers fare in comparison, especially someone who is a manager in the engineering space? How have you seen them fare in contrast to folks who are coming out of 4-year degree pipelines?
Yeah. So the main difference that we noticed was more time needed initially and the right environment and mentoring. So mentoring not just in terms of technology and development, but also in things like instilling confidence in participating in group design discussions. It can be intimidating to join a group of very experienced engineers who've been there for how many years and so on. So
Right.
providing that consistent feedback to bring the voice to the table. Beyond that, I would say the performance is pretty individual. It
Okay.
depends a lot on the willingness to continue to take advantage of the resources provided and keep learning. We have certainly seen some very good performance results, as well as some that are not so good, which is the kind of spread that you would see for people with any background.
Right, right. That's such a good point. That's such a good point. So, when thinking about like training, what sort of technical training goes into getting folks ramped up when they come out of a boot camp? I know obviously you spoke to like some cultural pieces and some
Mhm.
soft skills pieces, but are there like dedicated target resources focused solely on getting folks up to speed from a technology perspective, and like what does that whole process look like?
Yeah, so yes, we do have dedicated training coaches and leaders leading the initiative, and they also bring in external speakers. It might just be lead engineers or EMs from different areas.
Okay.
So the 3-week onboarding is focused on the very basics of building software, but also every company has its own tools and frameworks. So we provide some of that. We also have actual project work going on in the pod within those 3 weeks, where we divide the group into smaller groups, and then we have a pod coach, and they do some actual software development with feedback that helps. Um, a lot of technology training happens as people are embedded in their teams, and they are beginning to take on stories and tickets and starting to work on them. And different teams would do it differently. But as a manager, for any new engineer, I would have them pair with somebody in the team. And as they are putting in code, they would get code reviews, and you learn so much from that continuous loop of
Mhm.
feedback. For our emerging engineers, beyond that, we are also bringing them together. We haven't crystallized the cadence because we will see how it goes. This is the first time that we are doing it, but regularly we will be bringing them together as a cohort, as a pull-out program, and we would be taking different areas of technology and giving them training on that. For example, one of the things we are doing is every other Friday they get together for a kind of a hack day, and they are working together
Awesome.
on a project. So this is beyond what they are doing, and I can share a little bit, not the exact project, but it is
Great.
some project that they're working on together, and they'll continue developing that as well. So I see the first few months being a time of incredible learning. It would
Awesome.
be drinking from the fire hose, I know that, but it's so exciting too, right? We all do that whenever we start
Right,
something new.
right. Jump right off the cliff. I love
Yes.
it. So, if I were at another organization and I wanted to really think critically about sourcing talent in a different way,
Mhm.
A, to get more non traditional candidates through the door, and B, because we need more talent, how
Yes.
would I go about getting this moving within my organization? Like, where do you recommend I start? What sort of conversations do I need to have? Who do I need to get on board? Like, if I wanted to start this fall, where would I begin?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say start looking into and start conversations with the area boot camps. Different boot camps have slightly different structures and different areas of different curriculums. So they might focus on a different area. I know there are boot camps that
Right.
really focus heavily on front end development. There might be boot camps that focus on mobile development or back end development. So if the curriculum matches what you are looking for, start with some potential hires. I mean, this is the approach that we used, starting small, learning from that and iteratively building up a program based on our learnings and ramping it up. For us, this approach worked better than to define a big bang program initiation based on assumptions and go with that. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the 2 points I would start with. One would be to start looking into the boot camps and then start small with some potential hires.
Awesome. So I'm curious, kind of related to that question, it seems like this works. And I know there's been a lot of engineers like being brought in through the bootcamp format, but I also know boot camps for data, boot camps for UX. Like there's so many boot camps that are emerging to give folks a different shot for
Yeah.
approaching technology careers. So I guess I'm just wondering, is Target thinking through how to incorporate this cohort model to other parts of technology that also have access through boot camps?
Yeah, so we have had campers in different parts of the company in technology services. I don't know about UX and data engineering specifically. I don't think we have gone down that path yet.
Okay.
But within technology, I know there are boot campers working in front end, they're working in creating back end services, also in infra kind of area, for example, security team. But I don't see any reason why it cannot be expanded. As you pointed out, it would require training and boot camps dedicated to some of those areas, as there can be fairly specialized areas.
Right.
But I can totally see this expanding into those areas.
Awesome. I guess my last question is, I guess 2 questions. Sorry. Last
No.
few questions. What's the process at this point for integrating these folks into the broader technology culture within Target and the broader Target culture? I mean, I think especially for folks living in Minnesota, we know Target has such a strong culture, and it's not as accessible right now. So what will it look like for this year's group to get them not only embedded within like the cohort model, but embedded into the broader parts of Target?
Yep, absolutely. So this is something we have been learning on our feet for the whole technology org as we've gone all remote. We always have a variety of company-wide as well as smaller group-wide programs ongoing for connecting with each other on target core values. For example, with everything that had been going on in Minneapolis, we had a series of listening sessions. We also have ongoing engineering connects, such as demo days for all of technology. We have hackathons and so on. So the emerging engineers have access to all of these, and they are informed and encouraged by their managers to participate in these. In addition to just coming together as a cohort and doing their emerging engineer things, they are provided the space and encouragement to participate and speak up in
Great.
our various programs to be a
Great.
part of the wider culture.
Awesome. So I think a lot of my questions were geared towards giving technology leaders and talent acquisition leaders some insight into what this could look like. But now I kind of want to ask a question for people who are connected to MnTech that are in like Prime Digital Academy right now, for example, or in the software guild, or like in the seat of someone who is dreaming and wanting to work at Target and is in a boot camp right now. Can you talk a little bit about like what should they be thinking about? How should they approach the process of trying to get into this emerging engineers cohort model if that's what they're looking for and wanting?
Yeah. So as we are running the cohort model, I think our hiring for this cohort is completed, because we want to make sure that once we bring the cohort together, we don't have people joining or leaving, but we will have new cohorts coming up. So
Okay.
as they are interested in, I would say, looking a little bit into Target and
Okay.
what we are doing in the technology area. Hey, I'm from the app, so I have to plug this in. If you have a smartphone, pull down the Target app and look around a little bit. we do we do a lot in the technology area, and a lot of people don't realize how technology driven we are. So learning a bit more about it and just bringing that natural curiosity about it to the conversations would be great.
Awesome.
Also, going to Target website and you can find a link to the jobs would be helpful, because you can go in there. And Jade, I can send this out to you as well, so you
Great.
can send this out. But looking at the description of the engineering, emerging engineering program, the job
So does that
requisition.
list as like a job description? Like, is it listed like that, or you
Oh yes,
apply for a position that happens to be in it?
it is listed like that. It is listed
Oh,
as Target Emerging
awesome.
Engineering Program. So you can,
Okay.
yeah, you can look at, what we are looking for and what we are hoping you bring to the table, what we are hoping we can provide to you. So those would be a few things that would help you learn and
Got it.
kind of, gear towards
Okay.
it.
Okay, awesome. So for folks that are potentially interested and would want to think about it for like next year, for example, when another cohort emerges, are there resources to like share in the now around like what the job posting looked like when it was live, just so people can kind of start thinking about how to prepare and what to be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Awesome.
I wish I had it up here on screen right now. I don't, but I can send it out to you, and that would
Okay.
be great to share out. Yes, we do
Perfect.
have that.
Perfect. My last question, super open-ended, take it in any direction you want. What advice would you have for someone who leads an engineering team, or someone who is in the chair of a talent acquisition person and is struggling to find the right talent, especially diverse talent? What are your last thoughts for that group, people who are thinking about talent?
Yeah, absolutely. Partnering with a TA to really build out that talent pool, and really try to be mindful of, reaching out to all these untapped areas, because the wider pool you have, the more success you'll have in eventually, as you're going through your rigorous screening process and all, where eventually you'll have diverse talent. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that it requires being mindful, and again, maybe just going out to different conferences and so on. I know we go to Grace Hopper and we reach out to a lot of women technologists there, and we've had some great hires from there in gender
Yeah.
diversity. So just thinking through, and Minnesota Tech is a great resource as well. Just reaching out and building that good talent pool to start drawing from as you go through your screening. I have found it to be the most useful.
Awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out next to the fire. I mean,
It was
hopefully at
awesome.
some
Thank
point we
you.
could do like a real fireside chat, but this was good too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jade.
Awesome.